Hi everyone, it's me Gaming Do, and well, you know the drill by now. It's time for my 2024 film ranking, where I do a ranking of every film that I saw new this year, and well, this year, coincidentally, to match up with the number, we are ranking 24 films that I saw from this year. And obviously, this is my opinion and stuff like that. You know the drill. I've been doing these videos since 2017, so yeah. Alright, let's get on to it. What do I think is the worst film of 2024? That would be the absolute disgrace of a movie known as Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. This is legitimately one of the most disrespectful films I've ever seen. I feel like a lot of these films are sequels towards the bottom of the list that are a bit disrespectful of their previous installments, but especially Doom Syndicate. This film looks like it would belong on PS2 graphics. Compared to the original Megamind, which is one of DreamWorks' all-time best movies, you have what just might be their worst movie they ever made. I'm serious. I don't like the Trolls movies that much, but you know what? At least their animation is decent. Now, I haven't seen a lot of the Netflix movies they've released for DreamWorks, but I did see this out of morbid curiosity, and I absolutely hated its guts. I think this film is. Blech. I don't even. When I say it's on par with Norm of the North or Food Fight, I'm not kidding. This is legitimately one of the worst animated films ever made. But number 23 is another animated movie, and it's another animated movie that I think disrespects his franchise massively. Well, coincidentally, it's not much better than Doom Syndicate. You know, Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, had a lot of potential. It just fell flat on its freaking face for the most part. Oh my god, is this film annoying. But it's not just annoying, it's downright. I can't even put into words how cringe inducing this movie is. And I didn't believe it at first. I watched this movie like a month after most of the critics did. I mean, this movie got leaked last year, I believe, or earlier this year, but I didn't watch it until it came on Netflix, and I watched it like a month after it released, so I saw the critics saying it was really bad. It's like legitimately maybe the worst thing released from the SpongeBob franchise, and I was like, worse than A Pal for Gary? Worse than Squid's Visit? Worse than SpongeBob You're Fired? Yup, they were right. This is legitimately, I think, the worst thing to come out of the SpongeBob SquarePants franchise. Um, I will just say one thing. SpongeBob sniffs a turd in this movie. I can't freaking believe that just came out of my freaking mouth. SpongeBob sniffs a turd in this movie. But it's not just that. You have Sandy's relatives, who I find boring as hell. The Bikini Bottomites are absolute pricks in this movie. And most of the live action characters I could care less about, so it just brings it to a annoying nothing movie that just disrespects the SpongeBob franchise massively. Huh. Well, would you look at that? Originally, before I even saw this movie, I thought I was gonna have Madam Web here, and say, I owe Morbius an apology for how bad Madam Web was. But after seeing Kraven the Hunter, I can't believe I'm saying this. I owe Madam Web an apology. Guys, Kraven the Hunter sucked. It's the worst Sony Spider-Man film I think ever made, or Spider-Man universe film ever made. The performances were pretty much all downright crap. Even Russell Crowe, who I think is usually a very good actor, was pretty bad in this film. The CGI is Black Panther rhinoceros levels of bad. As much as I really like that movie, the movie's CGI isn't all that great, but Kraven the Hunter is just that the entire time. It's embarrassing. It's not funny, it's boring, it goes through, I can't even describe it, it's just so stupid. It legitimately feels like one of those really bad early 2000s comic book films. Like, legitimately, that's exactly how it feels. And we're in 2024, almost 2025 at this point. We should be long past that point. Okay, this is where I'm gonna start to have some trouble, maybe. Because I'm known for my Loud House content. But initially, I gave this film a really good review, citing it's legitimately one of the best things the Loud House franchise has released since the third season. Well, upon watching it a second time, I feel the total opposite. I feel like this isn't as bad as some of the modern episodes. Like, at least it had substance to it and stuff like that, but I just come to realize, and I'm gonna say this in a future video by itself one day, I have pretty much fallen out of love with this franchise at this point. I don't do reviews anymore. I haven't done an episode review in almost 3 years at this point. And that's for good reason. I don't really care about the Loud House franchise anymore. And it's mainly because of what the show has become. It's just a cash cow now, pretty much. But it's not making any money. But it's Nickelodeon's next... I compare it more to being Nickelodeon's next Fairly Odd Parents rather than Nickelodeon's next SpongeBob. But it's basically this generation's Fairly Odd Parents. Like, it's their second biggest cash cow. They're going to keep milking it with a live-action franchise. So, out of almost principle, I put this lower. But also, I come to realize this movie has a lot of flaws. There's a lot of stupid jokes. And while I do really like the last, 30 minutes of this film, honestly, I found the first half of the movie really boring upon the rewatch, and yeah. So, No Time to Spy, a Loud House movie, is much lower than I initially ranked it, so yeah. I can't believe I put it lower than a certain movie, but at least I had some slight moments of dumb fun with the number 20 spot. Hold on there, Madam Web. Just because I owed you an apology for Kraven doesn't mean that you're not a bad movie. 'Cause you are. But I will say that you are still the second worst Sony Spider-Man film ever made. Both coming out in the same year. That's pretty freaking hard to believe. But yeah, coming in at my number 20 is Madam Web. Legitimately I call it Pepsi product placement, the movie, because that's the thing I note from this movie the most. The Madam Web costume she wears in the movie is okay, I guess. It's not that bad, but the performances are borderline a joke and stuff like that. I don't know. I saw this movie towards the beginning of the year and have yet to rewatch it, and I don't retain a hell of a lot, which is a big problem for your movie. If your audience doesn't retain a lot of knowledge when they see it the same year, you know you're in for a pretty bad treat. Wow. I cannot believe how much of a dip in quality this is compared to the first movie. Number 19, in my opinion, is Joker Folie à Deux. And the reason I put this out of the bottom 5 is purely because of Joaquin Phoenix. I think he's yet again very good as the Joker in this movie. Literally everything around him sucks. This movie is pretty bad. It's not the worst DC movie ever made or something like that. In fact, I wouldn't even call it the worst DC movie of this decade so far. But this is probably the number one film of all time for dip in quality compared to its first film. Well, actually that's kind of a lie, because Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate would probably take that spot, but this is probably more noticeable. But the thing I hate the most about this film is what happens in the very end. Guys, if you don't want spoilers, skip to the next spot in the list. You'll see it. But Arthur Fleck is freaking killed at the end of the movie. What the hell? And I'm pretty sure that Todd Phillips openly said he hated this movie too, so why did you even bother making it? Now I think the Joker should have just been a one and done movie, but you have this terrible sequel to kind of crap on its legacy. Alright, here we are. The most disappointing film of the year. Coming in at number 18 is Kung Fu Panda 4. Listen, this film is a lot better than Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. But at least going into Doom Syndicate, I kind of knew it was going to be a disaster. This film, a legit theatrical Kung Fu Panda 4, I think it's the first film on the list that's not bad. Like, it's not a bad movie or anything, but it's the first Kung Fu Panda movie I've seen that I didn't consider good either. It's got a lot of problems compared to the first 3 films. First of all, the most noticeable thing is that the Furious 5 are pretty much completely absent from this film, and that takes away a lot of my enjoyment. Poe basically giving up the Dragon Warrior already is a really stupid decision in my opinion, and it's just... the humor is dumbed down in this movie compared to the first 3 in my opinion. Awkwafina, no offense to her, is just the same character she always is. And well, what else can I say that hasn't been said already? This film is really a big downgrade compared to the first 3. I'll be honest with you, in general, I'm not a huge fan of the Ghostbusters movies, but I find them to be just okay. And that's pretty much how I would explain Frozen Empire.
Actually, I'm a pretty big fan of the first movie. Just every film after that, I haven't really been a huge fan of, even the second one. But I find them okay. Um, Frozen Empire is probably my third favorite in the franchise, actually, after the first one and Afterlife. But it's still not this absolute masterpiece. I love Paul Rudd in this new universe and stuff like that. I like that the older Ghostbusters get him a little more screen time in this movie and stuff like that, but I would still probably only give this movie about a 6 out of 10 or so because it's still has a fair amount of flaws, so I'm not a huge fan of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. What can I say about Moana 2 that other people have not said? Not very much, I'll be honest. It does feel like a direct to streaming service movie that was last minute put into theaters and stuff like that, which technically was. But for those standards, it was decent. Not great, but it was a decent sequel. The first one is without a doubt better. And I didn't even see the first one till after the pandemic, believe it or not. I finally gave it a watch around the end of 2020, early 2021 for the first time, and I really liked it. I think Zootopia is my favorite modern regular Disney movie, but if it wasn't for that, Moana would probably be my second favorite. 2016 was a pretty damn good year for Disney, in my opinion. But, yeah, Moana 2 is a decent sequel. It's a better sequel than Frozen 2, that's for sure. And, yeah. All I'm going to say is I hope next year when Zootopia 2 comes out that it turns out to be way better than this. While this movie isn't bad, it's not really great either. I don't know how to say it. I found the post-credits scene particularly stupid. Like, I think they should have done that in the actual movie itself. But, yeah. Moana 2 was fine. Not great, but not bad either. I only heard about this movie like 2 or 3 months ago. Like, probably after my birthday, I heard about this movie. It was a big shock, a Christmas action movie with The Rock, Chris Evans, and J.K. Simmons. I was freaking fascinated to watch this movie, and it's not a particularly bad movie. It's goofy as hell in my opinion, and how would I compare this? I would almost say Red One reminds me of Christmas themed James Gunn Suicide Squad, kind of. It's a bit different than that, but it gives me kind of those vibes of it sort of being a team up movie. Not really Avengers, but I don't know, it kind of felt like James Gunn's Suicide Squad in Christmas form, but I don't think it quite had the charm of the James Gunn Suicide Squad, and some of the jokes were a little bit cringeworthy, but overall, Red One was a pretty good movie. It was certainly a lot of fun, but just a little too goofy at times, in my opinion. I can't believe I'm saying this. Despicable Me 4 is a better movie than Kung Fu Panda 4. You would have told me that this time last year, I would have laughed in your face. But I thought Despicable Me 4 wasn't that bad. We're still not into the great movies yet. They'll be coming pretty soon though, but Despicable Me 4, It was a serviceable enough fourth film. I like the new little Gru. I think he's cute. I like all the scenes with Gru in this film. The Minions, honestly, since the first Minions movie, have kind of just gotten on my nerves in all honesty, but um I like the arc of the girls a little bit more in this film and Lucy and stuff like that. So actually, I might go as far to say I like this film more than the third one, Despicable Me 3. I still don't like it as much as the first two, but I actually was quite surprised that if it wasn't for the Mario movie, I would say this is the best Illumination film since the original Secret Life of Pets. But Mario came out last year, so that obviously overshines this film by a landslide. But Despicable Me 4, I surprisingly liked more than I thought I was going to. Last year, Chris Pratt played Mario. This year, Chris Pratt plays Garfield. And the Mario movie was better. But I did like the Garfield movie a little more than I thought it was going to. I made an analogy on my Letterboxd review of this film, which if you want to know my film ranking earlier in the year and you want to get spoiled, you can kind of go to my list on my Letterboxd account, but that's besides the point. Anyways, Garfield movie, I compare to a Stouffer's lasagna. It's not as good as a nice, really creamy, saucy, homemade lasagna. But, you know what? It's serviceable enough every blue moon. That's how I compare it to. The Garfield movie is not as good as the old cartoons or anything. I do like it more than the Breckin Meyer film and the Bill Murray films. Oh, who am I kidding? I love those films in a so bad it's good way, but this film is not so bad it's good. It's actually pretty decent. The humor's fun. I like seeing young Garfield. I found him pretty cute. Overall, I'd say for the first feature-length Garfield movie in theaters in like 18 years, it was pretty decent. Wow. Talk about a tonal shift. By gosh, does this movie turn dark at times. I didn't expect that, but this movie actually can get pretty dark at times. If is a lot of fun. It has its flaws. I think it's very goofy at times, and the tonal shift is very jarring, but overall, a film with Ryan Reynolds and a bunch of imaginary friends kind of reminds me of the closest thing we'll ever get to a Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends movie, which is a show I really like. So, I did enjoy the movie overall. This is one of the films I have the least to say about it because it's not a very memorable film, but from what I remember, it was a pretty good movie. Now we get on to the films I actually like a fair amount. Coming in at number 11 is the remake and the first film I saw in 2024, the remake to Mean Girls. Here's my opinion on the original. I saw it for the very first time last year and thought, I don't know, I thought it was going to be a little bit girly, but it actually turned out to be a really freaking good comedy. Like, legitimately one of the funniest movies I've seen in a long time. So I actually got pretty excited to see the remake, which was coming out a few months later. So I sat down and I watched it, and I liked it. I thought it was a pretty faithful adaptation to the original. It's not as good as the original, but Angourie Rice is a pretty good replacement for Katie from Lindsay Lohan, so I thought that was good. I like the role of Regina George in this film. And the songs, some of them worked, some of them didn't. I'll be honest, the worst songs in this film are probably the weakest part of the movie overall, but I'll just say this. I featured this movie in one of the first GD Plus films in 2024, the movie debate where the gang went to go see Chucky versus Frankenstein or Mean Girls. And yeah, I do enjoy this movie overall. And honestly, it's probably one of the better remakes in recent memory. Okay, so I have a story time for you. When I watched this film, Civil War, do you want to know what day I watched this film? July 13th. Do you guys remember what happened on July 13th? That was the day our president-elect almost got killed. So, this is probably the last movie you want to watch when you find out news like that. So, it was anxiety inducing. I was literally watching the movie probably about halfway through, and then the news came on about Trump. Now, I'm not going to get anything into politics in this entry or anything like that. I'm just stating that I was watching this movie when I found out about what happened to Donald Trump that day. And it is the last movie you want to watch during that time, trust me. But Civil War was pretty damn good. It's very anxiety inducing and pretty scary. I don't think it's quite gonna be this. If this ever happens again, I don't know. I don't think our country's ever gonna get into a big civil war like this movie betrays it, or portrays it. What am I trying to say anyway? Civil War is a good movie. Kirsten Dunst was the highlight in the film, in my opinion. I thought she did a really good job in this movie. But other than that, I do feel like this movie is a little tiny bit unrealistic. I'm not going to get into many of the details because this movie is pretty disturbing, honestly, but yeah, I think this film is pretty damn good, and while not as good as some of A24's other films, I do think it's a pretty good entry from the company. I think Wicked is probably the biggest surprise of the entire year, and I really just watched it because I needed another entry to add on this list. I wanted to purposely do 24 films this year. But I liked Wicked a lot. I liked the way they portrayed the Wicked Witch and Glinda in this film. I think casting Ariana Grande, this is honestly really good. I was quite surprised. But I enjoyed her in Victorious, I kind of did. What am I trying to say? This film, it's really charming, it's really cool to see, and honestly, it leaves me really excited for the second part, which is coming really soon. So, yeah. If you're a fan of The Wizard of Oz in general, I would actually go and suggest you see this movie. I think you'll have a really good time. And now we enter this year's scariest film, Longlegs. This movie is fascinating, but also really disturbing. Particularly one of the murders that Longlegs did involving I don't even want to describe it. It's disgusting, but it's one of my most. It involves one of the things that absolutely disgusts me the most, and it just turned my stomach. That's a good way to describe this movie. It's stomach turning, but it is a very good horror movie. I think it's. If it wasn't for another one, it would be my favorite horror movie of the year, but one other horror movie takes over this spot. Longlegs, though, dude, it's freaking creepy. And now we have the newest film on this list, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Each one of these films keeps getting better and better. I like the first one a lot. I hold a lot of memories of that because that was the last movie I saw in the movie theaters before the pandemic began. And I went with all of my friends out to go see that and stuff like that. And it was a night that I will remember forever. Sonic 2, I saw like a day after it came out, and I really enjoyed that one too. I think it's even better than the original. Sonic 3, believe it or not, is the best of the trilogy. I feel like this movie, its serious moments hit a little harder than the first two. I think its comedy bits hit harder than the first two, especially Eggman, who is just as good as ever. And I really appreciate Jim Carrey coming back to the role and not retiring and stuff like that. Keanu Reeves as Shadow, I think, is the highlight of the movie, though. He's plays Shadow just about as good as you possibly could. And I had a really fun time with this movie. That's the perfect way to describe Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Fun. This is one of the most fun movies I've seen all year. Only very recently did I get into the Terrifier franchise, but by God, do each of them keep getting better and better, sort of like Sonic. Terrifier 1 I think is scary. It's not as goofy as the other two, and I like the tone of it the most, but overall it's probably my least favorite. 2 is this film that just goes batshit insane and literally rivals some of the most violent horror movies ever made. And the third film is the best, in my opinion. I think it has the best kills, the best portrayal of Art the Clown. I love the whole Christmas atmosphere and stuff like that, and I'm actually going to be watching this film again very soon for the holidays. So, yeah. This is my favorite horror movie of the year by a pretty wide margin, actually, and you want to watch a Christmas horror movie, I'd say skip Silent Night, Deadly Night and watch this. Well, believe it or not, I never had a huge interest in seeing the Dune movies until this year. I heard the first one was really good, so right before the second one came out, I decided to watch the first one, and I really enjoyed it. And eventually, when the second one came out on Blu-ray, or 4K, I decided to watch that one too, and I think it's even better than the first. This is some of the best action you will see all year, some of the best acting. It's hard to believe how right they got these Dune movies so far. Hopefully it can turn out to be a good trilogy at least, if not more, because I know there's a lot more installments in the Dune franchise from the books, but Dune, I think, is sort of kind of the Harry Potter of this decade, where it's a book series made into movies, and I don't know, they're just as good as the books in my opinion. Okay, here we go, one of the big ones. Number 4 is Deadpool and Wolverine. This film is actually probably my least favorite of the three Deadpool films, personally. I just feel like something is really missing with the lack of the other Deadpool characters and stuff like that, like Colossus and Negasonic and stuff like that. But it's still an awesome movie. When Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds team up in this film, it is some of the most fun you'll have in cinema ever. You have all these neat cameos, like, spoiler alert, Johnny Storm played by Chris Evans, you have Wesley Snipes' Blade, you have Channing Tatum's Gambit and stuff like that. But you also have X-23 or Lauren returning, and it's so cool to see all these characters. It's almost like a homage or a goodbye to the Fox X-Men universe, and Marvel delivered. They managed to deliver a great R-rated Deadpool movie, a great R-rated Wolverine movie. Deadpool and Wolverine is an absolute blast. Whew, at last, Pixar. You finally made another sequel that's not a Toy Story sequel, that's close to on par with your first film. I don't think it's quite as good as the first one, but almost. It's because it keeps the tone of the first film and follows what the first film did right. Films like Incredibles 2, Finding Dory, Monsters University, I just think go into way too different tones than the first film, I guess you can say. This film just keeps it basically as a continuation of the original. Riley's 13 now. This film is about her joining this big hockey team and stuff like that, while new emotions are introduced like embarrassment, anxiety, envy, etc. And yeah, I think this is Pixar's best film of the decade. And honestly, I don't think Pixar has as bad of a track record this decade as most people say. The only films I really didn't like at all, actually there's only one film I didn't like at all, and that was Lightyear. I thought Lightyear was a stinker, actually, but I thought Turning Red was fine. Soul was pretty decent. Luca was awesome. Onward was very good. Elemental I thought was good. But Inside Out is the best one of the decade so far. I just think it does. It just feels like such a natural continuation of the original that it just. Whenever those emotions matched in the film, it just made me feel that exact same way. So, my third favorite film of the year is Inside Out 2. Okay. For the longest time, and I expected that this was going to keep the spot all year, but unlike 2017, something beat a Planet of the Apes film this year. But that still doesn't make up for the fact that Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is exactly what I wanted for a continuation from War for the Planet of the Apes, which is my all-time favorite movie. This film is awesome. The new ape Noah is just as intriguing as Caesar. The funeral sort of they have at the beginning for Caesar is really emotional. I like that this film sort of doesn't leave off, apes and humans are just fine together now. No, there's still some tension between them at the end of the movie, which means there's going to be further sequels in this franchise, which is freaking awesome. Wes Ball was picked out to be a great director for this film, and I think it's my least favorite of the modern Planet of the Apes films, honestly. I like all of the previous trilogy a little bit more, but that doesn't make up for the fact that I still think this film is incredible. It's in my top 10 of the entire decade so far, which just goes to show how great that last Planet of the Apes trilogy was, when this is my least favorite of the modern ones so far. But it is kind of telling, because there is one more film this year that I consider better than Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And that would be, coming in at my number one, my favorite film of 2024 is The Wild Robot. This film floored me. Literally to the point where I'd say Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is now, by a fair amount, the second best DreamWorks film of this decade. This film is legitimately probably one of my top 10 favorite animated movies of all time. Literally on par with Pixar's best. This film is just such an emotional story about parenthood, basically, and Roz taking care of all of these animals and stuff like that, and you, like... All I'll say about this movie, I don't want to spoil it. There are some scenes that caused me to tear up, particularly with this Goose character, and this movie just freaking floored me. I can't believe this wasn't even on my radar for most anticipated films of the year last year. But when I saw this film, I think it was at the beginning of October, I adore this film. I legitimately think this is in my top 25, maybe even, I might even go as far to say this is in my top 10 favorite animated movies of all time. This is a legitimate masterpiece of a film. I can't find any flaws with it. I think it is a perfect 10 out of 10 film, and we do have some tough contenders for the best film of the decade so far, but this potentially could be it. This legitimately might be the best film of the entire decade so far. Better than Spider-Man No Way Home. Better than, I think I put the Batman for 2022. It's better than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is very close with this film. It's better than The Way Back. I have to put probably Guardians 3, No Way Home in this film. Extremely close with each other, but this potentially wins it. This film was such a pleasant surprise and such a freaking masterpiece that it absolutely goes as my number one favorite film of 2024. So yeah, that's about it, guys. I hope you guys like this video of my ranking of all the 2024 films. Anticipate most anticipated films of 2025 list coming out probably within the next week or so. Expect some Christmas videos, including my Christmas haul, which is coming out very soon. Expect one Willow and Luna video and one GD Plush video to come out this week. And yeah, I hope you guys like this video. Tell me your favorite films of 2024 in the comments below. And yeah, that's about it. Gaming Dude here. See you later. Bye.